Yes.
Good morning, guys. Nice to be back. We're doing another live stream here from House of Light. Slightly different theme this time. I would like to talk to you about a weekend we've just had running here with Alpujarra Brothers. It's a mentoring organisation, a voluntary men's group that I work with. I've been working with for the last 3 years with the intention of bringing healthy mentoring to young men in our community, to support them in any way they need as they come up into their lives as men, as they come into our community and need to find their way, find their offering, to understand how and why they relate. And so, because I've just spent 3 days working with this, I thought we'd talk a little bit about that. There's a lot of crossovers with the work we do with the Learning Love model, and I enjoyed particularly this weekend starting to bring more Learning Love work into the men's work, because they're both very necessary. Yeah. So
I'm almost with you.
So it's nearly with me. Great.
Just say hello to Fiona, who's joined us. Thank you for watching,
Hi,
Fiona. I'm just taking a moment to share the live stream out.
Great.
And then we can talk more about what was involved in the weekend and how it went and
Great.
all the wonderful work that you're doing for the masculine.
Great. Hopefully for the feminine too.
Yes, exactly.
This is one thing I found when we started 3 years ago, that I'd often felt the pain of if I go right back when I was 19, I went to Kenya. I was doing some conservation work out there and forming links with kids similar age to me. It was a charity project run out of Cheltenham. And while we were there, we visited a traditional village with tribal people living there as they always had done. And they were continuing to live the way they had, but they opened to groups of people to go and see what it was. And the guy that showed us around, I'll never forget this, it was a lot of fascinating stuff about their culture. But he said at one point, the way the modern world, the Western world is operating, if you continue the way you're going, you are going to end up with war between the sexes. And they had very clear divisions and structures and rituals in that village for men, for women, one of the most amazing ones. They had a ritual for a woman that decided she didn't want more children. She would go with the women and they'd do some ritual, no physical intervention, but quite very strong process.
Yes.
And he described, you hear it from a distance. She has no more children afterwards.
Yeah.
So they have these ways, but he said, if we carry on the way you're going in your modern lives, and you're going to have war between the sexes. And I was just sat there thinking, we already have. That's not a prediction. That is the state of play. That obviously was a long time ago, over 30 years ago. And I notice in our community here, there's very strong female energy, very strong women. A lot of them carry a lot of anger and upset with men, with the masculine, with the patriarchal system, quite understandably. And I'd always been at a bit of a loss as to how one can shift that, change that. When I was younger, I felt very much drawn. I was very much into the feminist movement, but that also doesn't carry as a guy in some ways, or you lose something in doing that.
Because it's almost the feminist trying to be more masculine, to take that strength, so it steps more into a masculine role than actually being more feminine.
And when as a guy trying to go along with the feminist movement, you're denying so much. I had to deny so much of my energy.
Yeah.
And but I often wonder what could we do about it. And when I pioneered this group that's inspired by Band of Brothers, after 2 or 3 meetings, I realised this is what I can do for the women in our community. Is I can stand consciously in a room with the men, and we work with this. We work with ourselves, and it's just continued every week ever since. So it is for the men, but I very much feel it's what we can do to create healing in that rift, and also in so many other ways. Very quickly I started getting bounce back from the outer community and from women in our community, that they appreciated that we were meeting and doing whatever it is we do. We don't talk about
because it's kept quite. It's private, isn't it?
It is. What goes on? Confidentiality is massively important, and the structures they're borrowed from all sorts of different traditions, Jungian, Aboriginal traditions. There's all sorts in there.
Oh, goodness.
Rites of passage that have been written about for years, and they're ours to use. And we don't talk about those processes so much. We talk about them a little bit, but certainly it's confidential what one shares, and safe space for us to really go there. Yeah. But it affects those taking part, and it radiates out, and it affects the community around, because there's a slightly different energy when you practice being accountable, when you practice the 4 agreements we work with, which are: I take nothing personally, I do my honourable best, I make no assumptions, and my word is my bond. Now, those 4 agreements are absolutely impossible to keep. Yeah. We don't have them as that is how I must live my life. They are there for us to aspire to, and to keep thinking, why didn't I keep this agreement? It's not just that I didn't keep it. Why? And then I start to understand. I'm saying yes too much. I've got to learn to say no so that I can keep my agreements. For instance, taking nothing personally. Oh my God, in relationship that is incredibly difficult. And yet, when you start to bring that in, you practice it and you watch it and you observe it. If you can even begin to go in that direction, cleans up a lot in a relationship. Yeah. It helps massively with the storms and the drama. Calm right down if 2 people in a relationship stop taking the other person's behaviour personally. Yeah. Because
it's like our default, isn't it? The way that we're brought up is that if somebody says something, it's directed at you. Yeah. And it just goes straight in. Yeah.
Well, I think part of that is that as children, that is the case. A child is the centre of their universe, and everybody and everything in it is about them, isn't it? I mean, that is naturally so. And then as the ego grows, and you see teenagers where they imagine kind of that everyone's looking at them all the time. So some kids, they can't eat, particularly some women can't eat in front of people. You see them covering their mouths because they think everyone's watching. And then you grow a bit older and you realise, actually, everyone else isn't so interested in me. And then you get a bit further and you realise, actually, fucking hell, they're all as freaked out about being watched themselves. They've got enough on their own plate to care about where I'm at. And then, as you get older, you can start to have more of a sovereign view where you realise you're just part of a big thing, and who you are is not so important. It's where do I fit? What can I contribute? How can I serve within this? So all of that comes into it, and that's why this shift from these very clear but overlapping periods in our life. We used to have in all traditions many rites of passage, not just from boy to man or from girl to woman, but rites of passage all the way through from moving from being in your fertile years to nearer to being an elder, from moving into rites of passage around death, around birth. They're all vital. And so the group I'm working with, part of the work is for us to bring rites of passage back into, particularly for now, for men. Yeah. My dream is we will on the back of that, when we've got the infrastructure and the understanding, to start sharing that with the women in our collective, in our community. We would love to bring that too, but to begin with, we're working it out for men. And we had three amazing guys came and helped us. James Benzing's been with us from the beginning. He lives in the UK, but he's been mentoring me in running this group, in the facilitation processes. He's there on the end of the phone when we hit on something that I need support with. but 2 new guys to us came in who were at the very beginning of a band of brothers in the UK, Michael Boyle and Richard Olivier, and they came in to lend us their wisdom and their knowledge and many structures for how to mentor young men, and how to and a lot about the initiation, and it was incredible to hear them speak, to feel them in the room. Their strength and compassion is extraordinary, and their experience is phenomenal.
Yes, of course, there must be.
And one of them was talking to me at one point about in the learning love work. You'll have heard me talk lots about abandonment and engulfment.
Yes.
Abandonment can be seen as, well, when we're born, we have that need to symbiosis with mum. And if anything gets in the way of that, like you go to an incubator in hospital, or mum's busy or stressed or depressed, or dad's not supporting mum well enough, or society, the village isn't supporting her, so she doesn't have enough to put into the child feels it. And this is going to happen everywhere. It's not like
it's life. It's life. Modern life.
And then the child grows, and the engulfment wound comes when they're not allowed freely to move and be themselves. Well, Richard was pointing out to me there's another break there for boys when at some point they're looking up to this model, this symbiosis, where they realise, but I'm not. Because we're boys, we're going to grow up to be a man. And the real strong connection is with mother. It's at some point that realisation. Similarly, both male and female babies get to a point around 2 where they realise that mum has a separate mind and can choose to do something other than what we force them to do. And hence, often the terrible twos is getting used to that. She might leave, or she might have other things on her plate other than me. But for boys, there's also this realisation, there's something different here. I'm not going to become that energy, because that's female.
Yes.
And that was interesting looking at that. But the need for initiation, for us to understand what changes when we become adults. And I see this crossover with learning love, because within the learning love model, I understand that I need to take responsibility for my feelings, and there's practices for doing that. So the self-parenting, sitting with uncomfortable feelings that might be triggered today, that come up from my childhood. I need to sit with those and parent them. It's my responsibility, I feel, to do that. If I don't take that responsibility, I'm not able to respond to life. I can only react, because anytime something difficult comes, I'm taken over by those feelings, because I'm not healing them. They will just continue to go round and round throughout my life. And so I'm interested in the idea of bringing rites of passage back, because it's a time and a place where elder men in the community can consciously support boys to see how they can stand in their own energy, and to see that they are welcome for all that they are. Because again, we all grew up, there were times when we didn't feel welcome. It could have been a teacher at school, it could have been bullied, it could have been moving to a new school, a new area, or our parents. It could be a misunderstanding where we don't feel welcome by our parents, or we might feel very welcome, but only if we are going to be a painter and we wanted to be a lawyer. Whatever way it is.
And
that's right.
Pressures.
So the rites of passage has all of this in there, where you consciously model an ability to get in touch with, express, and deal with emotions in a healthy way, and a welcoming of a young man into a group, into the society, into the community. So Michael Boyle started the Band of Brothers in the UK, and to begin with, he had to work with lots of guys that have been through the Mankind Project, because they have an initiation. Most of the guys that go through that love the work so much, they then meet in groups and do that. So until there were enough men around to do that, he said to me, we could take young men and take them through an initiation weekend, which They're creative. They could do that, but you can't initiate them in and then say, great, all right, you're done then. Bye, off you go. You have to initiate them into something, which means there is a wider body of guys for them to like, oh, right, now I belong here. Now I can circle up with these guys. I can belong in this circle of men who meet on a very real level, on a different level of connection. I have a very different level of connection with the guys that I meet with every Tuesday here than I do with some of my closest friends. We know each other in other ways, but it's a whole nother level of standing together and understanding each other, and the trust is extreme because we don't hold stuff back. It's not a brochure going on.
No, it's not. It's not the glossy picture. Yeah. It's the real and the rawness and the vulnerability.
Yeah.
And I guess the complete honesty as well. Because I think in society today, we're not encouraged to be honest about how we're feeling. It's got to be covered up. It's got to fit into that overly masculine role or image. It's more the image, isn't it? And then, so I think this work is really important. One question that I was thinking of when you were talking is the initiation for like a young boy. Is it an age thing, or is it a maturity, or is it just a personal knowing of when it's the right time for that? It's
a level of maturity, I would say, because the age thing in a tribal society they're still running in Africa, and you find it all over the world, in New Guinea particularly, and some places in North America, and certainly Aboriginal culture in Australia. My understanding is the boys that go through initiation there, if we took that age as the marker, it would be out. In fact, I know this from watching my boy growing up and thinking, when he got to 14, I thought, okay, he's coming up for time for rites of passage. And I was completely out because, of course, he's grown up in the modern world. So it comes much later because there's for so many reasons. So I wouldn't say it's down to age. Level of maturity, but there is you see that natural thing in teenagers. They kick off. At some point, it's just almost unbearable to be around our parents. Like, everything they think and do is just so annoying. Like, so a long car trip, long car trip can be like your skin's crawling. Everything they say just seems awful. And similarly for the parents, it's like, oh God,
who is this?
When are they going to move out? Like, could he just shower once in a while? Whatever it is, there's an irritation. My understanding of that is that's a natural part of our process to get us out of the nest, because healthily we need to leave to find our own life, to find our power, to find a partner. Initially, we need to leave our village, preferably, otherwise the village gets too interbred. So there's a strong push to get out. It's around that time, and a couple of people have asked me, well, my son's already grown up, and I have only daughters after that, and some say, well, why are you doing this way? I've never seen this in terms of something I would do with my sons. It's something I would wish the community, other men in the community, to take my boy if he feels ready at some point and says, I would like to do some initiation and some mentoring. That's not going to come from his dad. I'm what he's trying to get away from, probably. What he needs to sort out.
It's too close to home, isn't it?
And in traditional cultures, there would have been men that took the lads off to initiate, take them away from everything they know to begin with, away from the comfort of the home and hearth, away from their mother, and away from a way to see, to feel into, this stepping forward into life, and in that space, where do I fit? What could I be? And then with a healthy modelling of how it can be to live in your power.
So the men that are in, here we're in a rural area, so it's not, there's not a huge, well, I think there's a huge network, but it's, the community here is already quite open to spirituality, to growth and personal development.
Absolutely.
But what about in big cities? Is the movement moving sort of into the corporate world, into the modern world as well? Or?
Yeah, the two guys that came to talk with us, they work with a setup called Mythodrama, and they've been working for the last 30 years in the corporate sector, trying to get healthy leadership in there. I mean, what they spoke was a bit depressing. They were saying, I've been doing this for a long time, and I'm not sure that the leaders in the world are going to change in time in terms of the difficulties we face as a species, the disaster we've got going on, which is largely down to the leaders at the top not listening to the troubles we've got coming, or unable to let go of their insecurity about money or that need for more. So they've been working in that sector. And a lot of this work is in cities. A band of brothers works with kids on probation or they've been in care. So lots of people from difficult situations. So we're kind of in the luxury of living the rural lifestyle. Most of the lads we'll be working with have not been in trouble, or not largely with the police. They're not in the criminal justice system. They haven't been in prison, which the UK groups work with those guys. They're the most vulnerable. And we had a visit from Gethin from New York. He runs, similar to us, he runs a group inspired by Band of Brothers in New York, and they go into the prisons there. They go and work with guys in the maximum security prisons, mostly who've been in gang-related violence. A lot of them are locked up for life. They come together and work as men's groups. And when they come together in the room, they leave their gang affiliation at the door. So there's an amazing documentary called The Work. I highly recommend watching it.
Is that available?
Yeah,
I'd love to see that.
Yeah. And it shows a 4-day session where facilitators go into Folsom maximum security prison. They go in, interestingly, with some men from outside who've decided, I want to do some of this work, but I'm choosing to do it in the prison. For whatever reason, they all have different reasons. They interview them, and the one guy, he wants to go in because his dad was in prison when he was born and spent a lot of time in prison. He's like, it's not been his world, but he wanted to do some process work, see how it was in there. So they go in, and the facilitators work with, and the guys that are in there watch it. It's quite disturbing in some ways, the power of, and when you see that. A lot of these guys' lives, lots of them are never going to see the light of day, and when they peel back the layers in a strong enough container that they can dive in and see what it was, what happened for them. It can be very small things in their childhood about not having a dad there, or experiences where they felt unwanted that just nudged them in a direction where they're so insecure that when something challenges them, they fight first. Because they've had bad experiences, and that one thing's led to another. They're in prison for life, and it's quite haunting. Although talking to Gethin, he said, although those guys you see in the film, he said a good few of them are out now, even though they were never meant to come out ever again, because the parole board are starting to see after years of this work, wow, these guys are not only rehabilitated and no longer a danger, but they've got an enormous amount to give as healers themselves. So they go out and they work in the rough communities to support other kids not going down the same road.
And that's healing and growth, isn't it? On the really strong
level. This is about healing the community for me. And especially on a larger scale, I do see the disasters we appear to be heading into with climate, with just the rampage of consumerism, and the breakdown of family, of community, is a lot to do with the modern world dropping certain classes, certain important elements, rites of passage, healthy mentoring, and a modelling. And particularly for young men, because they do at the moment tend to go on to do jobs that run things, that steer the resources and the policies that are or are not going to take us in a good direction or maybe a completely destructive direction.
So this isn't just about men learning more about themselves.
No.
And, moving through the wounds from their childhood or their past. It's about the whole movement of the masculine.
Yes, Similar to the movement that's happened in the feminine. There's been big shift. Stephen Bildoff writes beautifully about this in a book called Manhood, and he says men's groups are important because only half the population has emancipated themselves, and the damage was done largely by the Industrial Revolution happening. It damaged for women and for men. Yes, the women got shuttled away to the home, if you like. If you want to generalise, you got stuck at home with the kids and didn't feel power over the finances. But the men also got sent away to work. They didn't have time with their children or their family. And there's so much damage in that. So we have the damage of no fathers being there because they were all at work, often doing something so abstract, because before that it would have been largely arable work, taking care of people or the land or the livestock or growing crops. A boy could see his dad doing that. But now they go off to the office or they go off to some factory making some widget, that you're not going to understand until you're 20. There's a loss of the handing down of wisdom from father to son. So even if your dad's around, his dad's granddad's great granddads, some of them were missing. And on top of that, now obviously lots of families split and dad loses contact with the kids altogether. So there's a lot of work to be done for us. Within
the group, I know you can't really talk about what actually happens within the brothers, but men get a chance to share where they're at. Do they learn about archetypes? Is there
So yes, we share where we're at, and we've been practicing certain processes, but this weekend was fascinating for me because Michael and Richard brought a set of processes that were new to us about mentoring specifically. We've just received a 2-day training from Alpujarra Brothers in the UK on mentoring young men, and these guys came and fleshed it out with a whole set of new tools you can use when working with a young man. For instance, a very simple one about talking to them, finding out what their goal is. Okay, so what's your goal? And discussing it. It might be to get a Lamborghini. We might want to have a look at that. What's really, is the goal to get a Lamborghini, or is it just that you want somebody to see you? You're not seeing. What? And then what's the reality? Well, the reality is that I haven't got a job or any money, so maybe the Lamborghini might be. We might need to take some steps to get there. And Michael said it's not a path. You don't find the kids' direction. It's breadcrumbs, and they move to this one, and then that direction might change. You keep working with them, and step by step. So there's the goal, and then the reality. This is called the GROW model. So goal, reality, options. So what are your options? You could just give up on the project and go away. We'll see what happens with that. Or you could do this, or you could do that. Maybe you could apply for a job, whatever it is. We look at that, and then the W is what are you going to do? Who's it going to involve? What are you going to do about it? And then, so you can work with that in a session, and then you come back to them as the mentor. Have you done it? What you were going to do? Here we go. You agreed to me. We get an agreement here.
So there's accountability as well.
Did you create a diary and put it up on the wall of your bedroom to help you organise yourself if that was what's needed? Did you put away? The job you've got is great, but did you put away the tenner that you said you were going to put away to save up for the Lamborghini? So that was a very simple model which we can look at. There's another beautiful model where you ask the guy you're working with to map his family out with stones. You get a set of stones and they pick, okay, that's me, and this would be my sister, and this would be where my kids are, and where they are on the frame, and they talk about it. And it's one way of getting to know somebody, especially with a complicated family background, which we have many complicated family connections here, and you get to see, So.
Is there, you've talked a lot about like the younger generation. Do you get like men coming to you that are maybe at that time in their life where they're thinking, well, what's it all about? Like in their 40s, 50s? Absolutely.
And more, the Learning Love work is more, for me, looking at that. It's like somebody comes to that work when they realise, often through suffering, that their relationships are not working, or they just don't have love in their lives. Either they're in a relationship and there's no love in there, or they can't find a partner. Often that's a draw to somebody to come, I'm ready to look. What I find fascinating with the work listening to guys' experience working with young men is this sort of more dynamic. It's more basic. A lot of these kids, they want a job, their own place to live, a car, and maybe a girlfriend.
Yeah.
They're at a different stage in life, and you're empowering them, helping them get past the negative beliefs that are holding them back, or them feeling that they can't do it, and seeing them and allowing them to be celebrated for who they are. You find their strengths and help them go for that. And generally with older people, they're looking on a more subtle level. How am I sabotaging my connections?
Yeah.
But it's the same work, really. It's just you can frame it in different ways. And I find that very exciting. It's like, there's a whole another way of looking here. What's important, what's going to work, and what's going to gel with young men as they try to find their way.
Yeah. I think it's amazing work, you know, for these future generations coming up, not being, or even if they start down the track of that old conditioning and the old patriarchal ways and the old imagery and expectations of the masculine, to really discover what the true masculine is, and that what that energy is all about, and that innate role and way of being that's in there but hasn't been allowed to be expressed or lived.
Or it's been massively shamed.
Shamed, yes.
Because there is this sort of societal view of the potential rapist or the big hairy smelly men that are kind of useless, and that getting past that and looking and finding, for instance, meeting a lad and telling him that his anger's welcome in the room, that all of his emotions are welcome in the room. They're not a bad thing. Anger on its own is not dark force. It's a very powerful, very necessary energy to get things done, to set healthy boundaries. But where it's a little bit like in my generation, when I grew up, one of the disasters was the misinformation or lack of information and education around drugs. Basically, we were told nothing. Our parents didn't talk about it, and the government said, just say no. And all drugs are all drugs, which is bullshit. There's all these different levels and areas of that world that we could have been educated about. Yeah. Some people may have stayed with pot and realised there's a big difference between pot and heroin. Yeah. You know, but we weren't educated. They just said no. Same with anger. People just say it's not welcome. You mustn't show it. We need education. We need to learn how to meet it healthily, because brought online, it's a very positive energy. Yeah. It's extremely necessary. The same with, we need to know how to connect with our grief, because if we can't connect with our grief in a healthy way, we can't actually let anybody in and have intimate relating. Yeah. We can't empathise with our family, with our partners, with our community, with our children when they are in grief, if we can't touch our own.
And showing emotions, men are not allowed to show their emotions. It's seen as weak or as girly or whatever of a label you want to put on it. So there's all that feeling that is so important to express, but it's suppressed.
To express and it's essential energy. So not only when we suppress it do we lose its goodness. What I love with the guys that were here this weekend, they'll come out with bits of poetry at times that are fitting for what's just come up. Yeah. Something will come up in the group, or they will start a session, and after what's happened before, they'll come up with something so moving. And all that poetry doesn't come from people that can't feel their feelings.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's very helpful. And then on top of that, with the Learning Love, I've told you many times, when we are not willing, because we haven't had healthy education in how to meet our feelings, so we shut them down. It's not safe to be angry, or it's not attractive for me to admit that I'm fearful, especially if I'm a dad and a partner. I'm the one that has to hold it together, while my woman might say, I'm a bit frightened about this, I have to go, it's fine. Yeah. If we can't deal with that, then we waste loads of energy holding it down, holding it together, forcing ourselves to appear okay. Yeah. And that's the false self. That you find, I'm fine. So we go a bit under that with the group. We don't practice coming in and going, I'm fine. It's like, well, how are you? Really? What's going on for you? What's touched you? Yeah. What are you pissed off about? What are you upset about? and that's welcome, and we support one another to start to understand what that is for us.
Yeah.
And that real power comes through this.
It's wonderful. It's really wonderful, and I love listening to you talking about it because you're so passionate about it.
Yeah, I'm so grateful to find my way into this, and for me it's very strong calling to work more and more with this area.
From what I'm witnessing, there's more and more men looking for it.
I was absolutely flabbergasted when James Benzing, who's been, as I said, my mentor through it, he was living here, and we talked about it because he runs a Band of Brothers group in Cornwall and started that, pioneered that. And I was interested in the work, and I've talked to him more and more. And when him and his family went back to Cornwall, he said, "Okay, you put a group together, and I'll mentor you on the end of the phone, and I'll come down." And I just thought, Alpujarra, our community, there is no way a bunch of men, none of the men I know, are going to come and do this work. Secondly, they're certainly not going to commit to coming every week. Yeah. And the minute I hardly even mentioned it, I put a few emails out, and boom, there was a group straight away, and it grew very quickly. And there's a lot of energy for it, a lot of energy for it, and they're dedicated. We come again and again. It's surprising. There's so much need for it.
Yeah, there really is.
And it feels, it's extraordinary to see. Working with this, it really does. It transforms and affects your life. It affects my marriage. It affects how I am with people to do with work. It affects how I make a phone call about work, and how I see myself in the middle of all of this. I remember one guy was here, a retreat leader, and he was looking around at a house right in the grounds, and it's beautiful and set up, and he was looking around. And he said, "Do you feel like a king, Adrian?" This is a few years ago. So shortly before we conceived Sophie, so sort of 4 or 5 years ago. And I said, "Oh no, I'm a caretaker. I feel like a caretaker of this place," which was that's what I had in my head.
Yes,
it was like, well, I didn't realise, and I now seen through working with the archetypes how I was denying my king. I was denying the sovereign in me because I was ashamed about it. It was like, oh God, no, because all the sovereigns I've seen are very disappointing. All of our leaders are political leaders. So many men are in positions of power who are just embarrassingly childish, selfish, undeveloped beings. So I didn't want to, I was like, oh no, I'm just taking care of it. If he came and asked me the same question now, I'd say, yeah, I do. I see this. I see where I belong in this, and that's my responsibility to be sovereign. I have my sovereign online when I look at that.
You can feel it.
But then, interestingly, this weekend we've been working with the 4 archetypes of the lover, the warrior, the magician, and the king. They all have a direction, and I've talked about this before with you. And these guys brought a 10 archetype model, which we're now looking at. We really enjoyed working with it for the weekend. We'll see, maybe we move forward with that. And that involves people like the renegade as an archetype, who wants to change things, disrupt stuff, but or the dreamer. And you see, you might be working with a young man, and his difficulty in getting his life together is that he doesn't turn up for the job interview, or he's not there at the beginning of the day for work or stuff. So you find, but that archetype has got power in it. So so you're a dream. So you were daydreaming when you should have turned up for work and you lost your job. Okay, so what's the, because that's creative. The dreamer, we need to build this place. Yes. Sure, we needed a lot of building, but it had to be dreamed. It had to be envisioned first,
and brought through.
And there's the dreamer there's the lover and the nurturer. So we've been working with the lover archetype, which is in this 10 model, but there's also the nurturer, which is a very different version. So the nurturer wants to take care. I would like to take care of you. The lover it's more on equal basis. I want to meet you, because the nurturer is kind of, let me help you up. And then what are the ones we've got them here? The strategist. So the sovereign we've been working with is the sovereign And in that area of order, there's also the strategist, the sovereign, the king or the queen, happy to stand in the middle and have the vision. The strategist is like, okay, how do we go about this? What are the steps? What do we need to put in place to make this vision happen? Yeah. And then we have the explorer, who's out looking for truth. Too much energy in the explorer, and you just go from one truth to another, another. You know, you've met people. You would have met people in the retreat world, rather than being able to settle. So, or too little energy. These are the shadows. Too little energy in the explorer. You don't really want to know anything. You just take what you were given at school and that's it. Go along with it. Obviously, the warrior's in there, the transformer, the storyteller, which is the creative part. There's the dreamer sees it all, and then the storyteller can put it into a language that can get it across. So, say we might dream of helping young men in the area, but the storyteller would come in, and how do we get across to them what we're trying to help them understand in terms of how you move forward through life. You come through the stage of the hero, which is a young part in a bloke. He needs to move beyond the hero into his king, because the hero can go in and kill the dragon and get the princess, but 3 months later, what does he do with the place then? And he's likely to just go off and find another hero thing, which is fine, but evenally you kind of need to have a bit more of an overview.
It's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
It was a wonderful weekend, and so much gratitude to James and Richard and Michael for what they brought, and for us actually really quite exciting, because Richard and Michael were at the very beginning of this in England. They don't work with Band of Brothers anymore, but they started it all from the bottom 12 years ago, and for them to come and visit us and give us their time very generously and support us in what we're doing here is just I can't put it into words. Really, really special.
Yeah, the energy here. I was here on Friday.
You scuttled away, Sarah.
I saw you
scuttled away.
The energy was so strong and so high, but it was like, I was like, wow. But there I was in the little office, and I was thinking, I'm a woman here in the midst of all this masculine rising, and I was like, no, it's too much for me. But I was aware that all of the men there were so open and so looking forward to the deep dive and to the growth and the healing that was going to come from it. It was really wonderful to witness.
There's nothing like it, the presence in it. I mean, I find it with Learning Love retreats also. That's why I love a 5-day retreat. Every day it goes deeper and deeper, and the group come, and then you have this amplified field of people working together on a real level. And so working for 3 years with a closed group, we take men in now and again, as I've said.
Is it 3 years you've been running? 3 years
over
already?
3 years we've been running, and the presence in the room, even on the weekly meetings, but do a weekend like this. Wow, it's just amazing. I mean, for me, that is such a rewarding, just that alone, to be able to have a place in my life where I can regularly go and be in a space where honesty is welcome, a real honesty. You can be really, really clear and straight with one another, and have presence.
That's
fills my
precious.
fuel tank up.
Yeah. So moving forward, the group here, the Alpujarra Brothers, is meeting every week. And do you have anything else in the pipeline?
Yes, so we've just done, as I said, 2-day training from the UK group on mentoring, and we covered a lot of mentoring skills. So we're going to continue now practicing those mentor skills with one another. Some of the other guys in the group, like myself, work with people anyway, so I'm quite familiar with running sessions with people. But many of the other guys are not, and some have said, "Oh, I'm not sure I feel confident." Right, mentor this young man. So we want to support that. So we'll practice the mentoring skills with one another, which is also very interesting. You get to know each other on a whole other level. And so there's the mentoring, where we can mentor a young man over time with sessions weekly. Alongside that, we are beginning to create an initiation weekend, which will be like a 3-day process through which they initiate. If they come through that, then they would be welcome to join the group if they wish to, or not, and we can then give them support with mentoring, or they can come to the weekly meetings and use the support of the group to do the processes we do, which is incredible work. That really, you can really start shifting stuff in your life. If you've got something holding you back, or something you regularly run into the same problems in your relating, you can really make some moves with that, with the support of not just one person facilitating you, but a whole group present with good facilitation to do that. And so there's two levels we want to bring to the young men in the area: mentoring and rites of passage. The rites of passage, we are still writing that, we're still creating that as a big process. Originally I dreamed that we could use the one that Alpujarra Brothers uses in the UK, just because I was terrified at the thought of creating our own, reinventing the wheel. It's a complex wheel involving all these archetypal energies, involving an understanding of therapy, involving the journey, the mythology, where you take somebody down into their feelings so they realise and own that things aren't, we start out in the false self. That's how you'll meet somebody on the street. That's for sure how we are likely to meet. Most young men will come to us going, I don't know what you're talking about, I'm fine. Or I've got this. There is a descent where you break through and you drop into, actually, I carry fear. There's some joy there, and there's some anger there, and so built into the 3 days, a descent and an ascent, and coming up and a stepping of a threshold into a group, and a celebration and an acknowledgement of the work the guy's done, all of this. So it's a big process to build a weekend. So we are started on that journey.
Great.
Hoping next year we will have that ready to go. Okay. But for now we're working on the mentoring, and then we'll pretty soon be opening for any young men that feel they would like support.
So if any young men or men in the area are interested or in what you're hearing, they contact you.
You contact me through my phone number's on House of Light websites, and check in on our website, check in on our YouTube channel, comment, ask questions, like it please if you feel to, and anyone wants to talk about the subject, I'm here. Anyone feels they would like support or would like to get involved volunteering as an older guy to want to support. As I said, we're a closed group, and we recently took a few guys in. It'll probably be a while till we do that again, but if you want to register your interest, I can keep, let you know.
Wonderful.
When we next take more guys in.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much, Adrian.
You're welcome, Sally.
And thank you everyone who's been watching. And if you've got any comments or questions for Adrian, we'll keep an eye on the live stream, and we'll pass them on, and you'll get back to them. Yeah,
great.
All right.
Well, I enjoyed that. Thanks,
yeah,
Sally.
Me too. It's great to hear about it. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.
What do I press?
Finish.